Sometimes the truth doesn't come from big fights or fancy speeches. Sometimes it comes out in the smallest, quietest moments. And on a video that Kody Brown and her husband Tony Padron posted recently, that moment came from a little kid, their daughter Avalon. What she said wasn't practiced, it wasn't planned, but to fans of sister wives it was like a huge shock because in just a few sweet words Avalon showed more about the broken parts of the Brown family than Kody himself has said in years. Hey everyone! Welcome back! If you are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like, especially if you've ever watched a moment on this show that made you stop and think, wow, things are way more messed up than they look. And I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments. Do you think kids notice when adults don't get along more than grown-ups want to admit? Let's talk about it. So here's what happened. Kody and Tony were making a reaction video for their Patreon, something they've been doing a lot now to give their side of what really happens in the family. While they were talking about one of the recent tell-all episodes, Avalon, their little daughter, walked into the room. Totally normal, nothing fake. But what she said next, or really what she didn't say, became what fans talked about all over Reddit and social media. She pointed at her grandma Christine and right away called her Mimi, a sweet nickname she clearly uses a lot. Then she looked at Chanel, another former sister wife, and called her grandma again. No waiting, no mixing up. That's love built on spending time together and having a real relationship. But then came the big moment. Avalon saw Robyn and went quiet. She didn't seem to know who she was. Finally, she called her my friend, but even then she looked confused. She didn't seem to know Robyn's name. And when Kody showed up on screen, that same pause, that same faraway look, and finally she called him Grandpapa, but only after trying to figure out who he even was. For lots of viewers, this was more than just a little kid getting names wrong. It was like looking in a mirror, because what that little girl showed with total honesty was the truth of who's really there, who has been around, who's present in her life and who's not. In this big family that used to live in one house, that once said they were united in faith and love, one moment from a little kid made it really clear just how far apart they've all grown. Now let's step back for a second, because to understand how big this is, we need to talk about the people involved. Kody, the daughter of Christine and Kody, has always been one of the quieter Brown kids, not always getting attention but watching everything. Since Christine left Kody, Kody has stepped up and started using her own websites to speak out. Together with her husband Tony Padron, they've started reacting to sister wives shows, sharing what they really think, background stories, and yes, throwing some shade when people deserve it. And what makes their talking different is that they're not speaking as faraway relatives. They've lived this, they've felt the mess. Tony, who's often been shown as silly or quiet on the show, has surprised lots of viewers with how smart about feelings and totally honest he is in these videos. He doesn't hold back. And Kody, who once tried to stay neutral, now seems more willing to call things what they really are. They've become, in many ways, the new truth tellers of the family. No script, no making things sound nice, just thoughts from inside the mess zone. And then there's Avalon, a little kid, a child too young to know the layers of hurt, betrayal, playing favorites, and emotional ignoring that the adults have been dealing with for years. But kids pick up on feelings. They know who hugs them, who calls, who visits, who sits with them. And the fact that she didn't right away know Robyn or Kody, that's not just about names. That's about being there. That's about who's been missing. Let's be clear, this wasn't some big dramatic fight. This wasn't Christine slamming a door or Janelle walking away from a confessional crying. This was a little kid just trying to remember a name. But that tiny pause, that awkward little moment, it told us everything. Because let's not forget, Kody Brown used to be proud of being the center of this huge spiritual plural family. He called it one house, one family. He wanted everyone together. But over the last few seasons, especially since the move to Flagstaff, that togetherness has completely fallen apart. And what this moment with Avalon showed is that the disconnection hasn't just affected the wives and the older children, it's reaching into the next generation, the grandkids, the ones who were supposed to grow up surrounded by love from all sides. So when Avalon looks at Christine and gets happy but looks at Robyn and seems confused, that's not random, that's memory. That's relationship. And when she pauses before calling Kody anything at all, that's a reflection of distance, not just how far away, but emotional distance. And fans notice fast. The clip from that video started going around right away, with people commenting things like, "That kid doesn't know Robyn at all," and "She's calling Kody grandpa like he's a stranger from a storybook." Some people laughed, others got sad, but one thing everyone seemed to agree on: this wasn't an accident. This was what happens when people stop showing up. It's hard to watch, honestly, because even if you don't like Kody, even if you think he's brought all this on himself, there's still something sad about seeing a little girl struggle to know her grandfather. It's sad for her, and it's sad for what this family used to be, but it's also real, and that's what makes it so powerful. No editing, no filters, just a raw, unplanned truth bomb from a little kid who has no reason to lie. There's something really haunting about a child not knowing her own grandfather, and not just any grandfather, but the man who once stood at the center of a big polygamous family and called himself the glue that held it all together. Yet in one quiet, unplanned moment, Avalon, the granddaughter of Kody Brown, looked at him on screen, paused, and seemed totally unsure who he even was. That pause, that hesitation, it's not just a cute little kid mix-up. It's emotional proof of something deeper. Kody has become, quite literally, a ghost in parts of his own family. This wasn't fake. It wasn't a planned storyline. It happened naturally while Mykelti and Tony were filming, just them and their daughter watching old footage. Avalon right away knew her Mimi Christine with big smiles and excitement, that someone who's been present in her life, who shows up, holds her, talks to her. She knew who Janelle was too. She called her grandma with ease and knowing. That's love that's been taken care of over time. But when Robyn appeared, silence, just a puzzled look, then a hesitant little "my friend." And when Kody came on screen, another pause, a confused look, and finally a distant-sounding "grandpapa," like she wasn't sure if that was the right word. It felt forced, like something she'd maybe heard once but hadn't actually lived. It was such a small moment, no drama, no yelling, just quiet watching, but it said so much. Because in a family that once bragged about being together, where Kody put himself as a present, involved father and grandfather, we now see the truth being there has to be earned. It doesn't come with a title. Grandpa means nothing if you're not around. Grandma doesn't stick if there's no relationship behind it. Avalon's honest reaction drew a sharp emotional line between who's actually been there and who hasn't. Her love for Christine and Janelle was automatic, real, you could feel it. But Robyn and Kody, she didn't connect with them, and that lack of connection is more telling than any interview Kody has ever done. Because here's the thing, kids don't lie about this stuff. They don't pretend to know someone they don't remember. They don't fake love, and they're not interested in adult politics or family drama. They respond to what's real. If you've been in their life, they'll show it. If you haven't, they won't fake it just to be nice. This moment became a mirror, a painful one. It showed back the truth. Kody refuses to admit that his emotional absence is no longer just felt by his wives, but by the next generation. Avalon sees Christine and her face lights up. She sees Kody and she hesitates. That hesitation? That's a child telling the truth that the adults have been too careful to say out loud. And maybe that's what makes it hurt the most. What's interesting about this new chapter in the sister-wives world isn't just who's speaking out, it's how they're doing it. Mykelti Brown Padron and her husband Tony aren't just sitting on the sidelines anymore. They've stepped right into the center of the conversation, using Patreon as their stage. And it's not just gossip, it's taking back control. while Kody Brown continues to present a calm, measured version of events through cameo messages and tightly edited TLC interviews. Mykelti and Tony are pulling back the curtain on their Patreon. They sit down together, casual, unscripted, and unfiltered, responding to actual Sister Wives episodes and offering the kind of inside info viewers have wanted for years. They're not acting, they're reacting. And the difference shows. This isn't about being bitter, it's about balancing the story. Mykelti has lived the story from the inside. She's Christine's daughter, someone who watched the slow falling apart of the family not as a viewer but as a daughter caught in the emotional mess. And now, instead of letting TLC or her father's public statements tell the full story, she's giving fans her version, not the cleaned-up spiritual spin Kody version, but the one that includes real pain, real distance, and real choices. Tony, in his own style, doesn't hold back either. He brings humor, yes, but also cutting honesty. He doesn't pretend things were ever perfect. And when they discuss moments like Avalon not knowing Kody or Robyn, they don't spin it, they sit in the awkwardness and speak from experience. They confirm what we've seen with our own eyes, that emotional absence can be covered up with a smile or a sound bite. It's clear that Mykelti and Tony aren't just commenting, they're taking back control of their story. In doing so, they've become the unexpected narrators of the after Kody era of Sister Wives. They're younger, more honest, and unafraid to say what so many of the older adults danced around for years. And whether people agree with them or not, there's no denying this, they're telling a truth that feels lived, not rehearsed. And that makes all the difference. If there's one thing that's changed the game behind the scenes of Sister Wives, it's how Mykelti and Tony are choosing to speak up. And they're not doing it through interviews or mysterious Instagram posts, they're doing it on Patreon, a close, no-frills website where they talk directly to fans. No editors, no filters, no TLC shine. Mykelti, Christine's daughter, grew up in the chaos of polygamy. She's seen the favoritism, the silence, and the emotional ignoring up close. And now, alongside her husband Tony, she's pulling back the curtain on what viewers didn't get to see. They react to Sister Wives episodes in real time, offering real context to moments that may seem confusing or one-sided on TV. Tony brings a kind of blunt honesty that cuts through the fluff. Mykelti offers emotional clarity, not bitterness, but awareness. Together, they've confirmed what many fans have suspected, that Kody's public face is miles away from the man he's been behind closed doors. And what they say lines up with what's already on the show: the emotional absence, the distance, the lack of effort with the older kids. It's not just drama, it's lived experience. And hearing it from Mykelti and Tony feels like finally getting the missing half of the story. They aren't just spilling tea, they're rewriting the story one episode at a time. And fans are listening. You guys, watching Kody after the move to Flagstaff was like seeing a man slowly losing his grip, not just on his family, but on his own role as head of the family. The older kids, especially those from his earlier marriages, felt that disconnect right away. You could see it in the way Kody struggled to connect or even just be present. It wasn't subtle, it was painful. Then came the tell-all episodes and, wow, instead of taking responsibility, Kody went on the defense, shifting blame like he was protecting a fragile image. He acted hurt, betrayed even, as if the distance between him and his older kids wasn't the result of years of neglect but some sudden act of disloyalty. It was heartbreaking and frustrating all at once. You could almost feel the cracks in his authority growing wider. The death of Garrison hit everyone hard, but for Kody it showed an even deeper emotional absence. He was physically there but emotionally checked out. The loss seemed to highlight how far apart he and many of his children had drifted, and it was a moment that no staged family photo could fix. Meanwhile, Chanel was not having it. Her responses during these moments were sharp, raw, and honest. No sugarcoating. She called out the distance and the neglect without hesitation, showing a strength that was both inspiring and sad. Her refusal to play along with Kody's version of events was a quiet but powerful rebellion. Kody's control wasn't shattered with a bang, it crumbled slowly under the weight of his own absence and the women who refused to stay silent anymore. This was a collapse born from neglect, not drama, but here's where it gets really interesting. Robyn's position in the family has always been weird. She came in as the fourth wife, but somehow she ended up being the one who got the most attention from Kody. And that created this strange dynamic where she was both part of the family but also separate from it. The other wives, Christine, Chanel, and Mary, they had history together. They grew up in this lifestyle. They understood the rules, the expectations, the way things were supposed to work. But Robyn, she was different. She brought her own kids from her first marriage, her own way of doing things, her own needs and wants, and Kody, well, he seemed to lose his mind a little bit when Robyn came along. Suddenly, all his talk about being fair and equal to all his wives went out the window. He started spending more time with Robyn, making decisions that seemed to favor her and her kids, and basically acting like a teenager with a crush. The other wives noticed, the kids noticed, and it created this tension that never really went away. What's sad is that Robyn probably didn't ask for all this drama. She probably just wanted to be part of a family, to belong somewhere. But the way Kody handled it, always choosing her side, always making excuses for her, always putting her needs first, it made her the target of everyone's anger and frustration. And instead of trying to build bridges with the other wives and their kids, Robyn seemed to retreat further into her own little world with Kody and her own children. You can see it in how the family interacts even now. When the wives get together, there's this invisible line between Robyn and everyone else. When the kids talk about their childhood, Robyn's kids have different memories, different experiences. They lived in a different house, had different rules, got different treatment. And while that might not have been Robyn's fault, it's the reality of what happened. And now, with most of the wives gone and the family scattered, Robyn is left with what she thought she wanted Kody all to herself. But is that really what she wanted? Or was she just trying to survive in a situation that was set up to fail from the beginning? It's hard to know. What we do know is that the distance between Robyn and the rest of the family has only grown bigger over time, and moments like Avalon, not recognizing her, show just how deep that distance goes. The thing about families is that they're supposed to be built on love and connection, not competition and favoritism. But somewhere along the way, the Brown family became about who could get the most attention from Kody, who could win his approval, who could be his favorite. And in that kind of environment, nobody really wins. The wives end up fighting each other instead of supporting each other. The kids grow up feeling like they have to compete for their father's love. And the family that was supposed to be united ends up broken and scattered. Robyn's story is a perfect example of how quickly things can go wrong when jealousy and favoritism take over. She might have started out with good intentions, but the system she entered was already broken, and instead of fixing it, her presence seemed to make it worse. Now she's left with the pieces of what used to be a big, chaotic, but loving family. And those pieces don't include most of the people who used to matter most. Maybe that's why Avalon's reaction was so powerful. Here's this little girl who doesn't know about all the adult drama, all the hurt feelings, all the complicated history. She just knows who's been there for her and who hasn't. And in her innocent, honest way, she showed the world exactly what this family has become, a bunch of strangers who used to be connected but aren't anymore. That's Robyn's legacy in this family, not the villain, but the symbol of how quickly love can turn into loneliness when people stop trying to understand each other. What does legacy really mean? If you ask Avalon, it's not about titles or family trees, it's about who shows up, who's there day after day through all the noise and drama. Avalon's instinctive choices, like not recognizing Kody or Robyn, speak volumes. They show us that emotional memory isn't something you inherit just because you share DNA. It's built through consistent love, attention, and presence. That's what sticks with us. This cracks open the whole idea of family unity and polygamy too. The image that's been painted on TV, this perfect blended clan, starts to crumble when you look closer. The myth of all wives and kids happily under one roof falls apart when favoritism, neglect, and emotional distance are part of the picture. But what's interesting is who's stepping up to rebuild. Women like Chanel and Kody are reclaiming their stories, their truth, and creating something real for themselves and their children. It's raw and perfect, but it's honest. At the end of the day, love isn't about names or appearances, it's about presence, the quiet everyday moments that make a difference. Absence, whether physical or emotional, leaves scars. But the women and kids who refuse to stay silent, they're showing us that reclaiming your truth is the first step toward healing. Legacy is less about the past and more about who chooses to be there now.